This is the MLM Complete Package Podcast. Here's Chris Lopez and Jason Wells.
In today's radio show, Jason and myself are going to give our rebuttal to an op-ed titled Multi-Level Delusions, published by Matthew Myers in the Daily Nexus newspaper. So I'm going to start off by reading one of the paragraphs in the article to kind of set the tone for everything. And it reads, "The opportunity that your friend offers goes by many names. Network, multi-level, or referral marketing make up the most commonly used euphemisms. These vague terms thinly veil a deceptive and entirely unsustainable business model. Your friend has been duped, or is in the process of duping you." End quote. Now, this paragraph really stood out to me because of how ironic it is. Because in his op-ed, he actually uses very vague terms and concepts to paint MLM in a very negative light. He also just writes out some flat-out lies. So what Jason and I are going to do is we're going to go through various topics and paragraphs and respond to it. And just to be very clear before we get started, look, we're not saying MLM is the perfect business model with zero issues. Hey, it has its issues, but so does every other industry and every other business model out there. So keep that in mind, and as we get to some of those issues that Mr. Myers touches on, we'll actually talk about some things that the industry needs to improve upon. So the first point Jason and I will talk about is, and this is reading a paragraph from his article, "The rest of your conversation is a flurry of pamphlets and buzzwords. Promises of early retirement and vacation homes abound. Catching up feels more like sitting through a timeshare seminar when you finally stumble away from the interaction. You are left with stacks of material and a final appeal to just think about it." End quote. Wow, so Jason, I guess MLM distributors are the only people who make promises and give people pamphlets, huh?
Well, and let me back up. Anyone that follows us know that we're very critical of our own industry. Like any industry, there's good and bad, and we don't like the bad. Anyone that follows our type of training, we can acknowledge some of the things that are talked about in this article, but it doesn't mean that everyone's doing it. And so I just wanted to throw in my little 2 cents on your introduction, because it's so true that painting a broad brush is frankly irresponsible, and it's actually defamatory. And if he were specifically targeting a specific person, fortunately he was smart enough not to mention any specific companies or specific parties. But because if he did, it would be, if MLM was a party in itself, as an individual, as a law sees it, his statements would be considered defamatory, because there's a lot of things in there that he's saying that are absolutely false. And I'm not going to get into con law and defamation and all that stuff. Anyone that knows us knows my background is in law, so some of that stuff jumps out at me when I see this kind of stuff. But the pamphlets and the buzzwords. Okay, pamphlets and buzzwords. So when I go in and look at a BMW, you don't think I get a bunch of buzzwords thrown at me by the salesman, and they're trying not to have me walk away without a pamphlet. They want me to have a pamphlet before I leave there. If I'm going to a home builder and I'm looking to buy a house in a subdivision, or I'm going to a home builder to build my own custom home, you don't think I'm going to walk away with pamphlets and I'm going to hear some buzzwords? It's so ridiculous that he's throwing these things that maybe people like or don't like, but tries to associate it that just MLM is doing it. And I don't do that, but I know people give pamphlets, and if somebody wants to know about your product, there's nothing wrong with it. Promises of early retirement and vacation homes. Yeah, people are doing that. I don't approve of it, but they're doing it in everything else. You don't think somebody's selling real estate courses so you can get your real estate exam, or people selling courses and information on how to trade stocks. And schools now, they're selling retirement vacation homes and money as a means to spend tens of thousands of dollars. People are walking out of school with $200,000 in school debt. I would like to know what UC Santa Barbara, which is a great school, by the way, but I'd like to know what somebody walks out of there with a graduate degree, how much debt they have racked up. And believe me, a lot of these schools are marketing the life that you'll have if you get this degree. Your life will be better if you have this degree. So, it's not appropriate to do that. And people in MLM that do that, it's inappropriate, but other people are doing it. And I just want to remind the writer here that, you can't say that everyone in MLM is doing that, because Chris and I would tell anyone that that's just not the way we build our business, nor do we agree with it. I'm sure you've got something to comment on this, Chris, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could reiterate a lot of the points you just said, but one of the things that stuck out to me was, you're right when you mentioned, UC Santa Barbara and just colleges in general, how many are walking away with student debt. Geez, how many people getting a degree, whether it's an undergraduate degree or even a graduate degree, are out there even able to get a job in their field or in their, from their area where they study? How many of those graduates are actually back home living with their parents? I could go through those stats, write an article, and say, well, geez, college is just an absolute waste of time and money, blah, 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 blah. But there again, you would be painting a broad brush, and that's not necessarily true, but it's true in a lot of circumstances. And let's just make the comparison. Let's say you join a complete scam in MLM, and the average price of the average MLM, I'll just say roughly about $1,000 is probably the midpoint. They usually range from $5,000 to $5,000, but it's usually about $300 to $1,500 depending on the company. So let's say you're out $1,500. How much would you say the average person is out in debt from school if school doesn't deliver to the person what they thought they would get from getting the degree? What would you, because I know you've done a lot more research on this than me, Chris, but just, I don't want to throw an exact number that somebody can hold us to, but I know the numbers, there's some numbers out there of the average school debt when somebody gets out of school. Have you seen anything on that? I know it's a lot more than 1,500. Yeah, I don't want to be, this isn't exact, but I've seen lots of averages from, what's sticking in my mind is in the 20,000s from an undergraduate degree to the hundreds of thousands of dollars for a graduate degree. And even a lot of times graduate degrees aren't guaranteed a job or even a decent paying job. Again, I can't remember the exact figures, but anyone go out there and Google it, and I'm pretty sure anyone has seen those figures at some point in the past. So again, another reason we're going through this rebuttal is to help everyone out there, a lot of times MLM distributors, to figure out, kind of like fact, or when people are exaggerating things and making, kind of bending words, using vague terms to make these claims. That way you can actually talk with, when people bring up these statements to you or these articles, you can actually respond in a decent way. And also, we don't want you out there as an MLM distributor doing some of these mistakes that the author is pointing out, and even giving the industry a worse reputation. So here's the next point I've written down from the paragraph. So I'm going to read a few sentences here from the article. Network marketing strategies distinguish themselves from illegal recruitment scams in one key way. They market an existing product. While the existence of a product makes MLM mathematically feasible, the nature of the goods they sell quickly illuminates the product's irrelevance. Network marketing companies deal in useless cleaning solutions, spiritual sleep aids, and phony health products. End quote. So the way I read this is that basically any company out there that doesn't sell a product would be illegal. Well, no kidding. If you walked into an Apple store and paid $1,000 for the latest whatever laptop, and they gave you an empty cardboard box, yeah, that would be illegal. That's just kind of like business common sense. Now, you're using your opinion as to what the useless products are. And I'll admit, some companies in MLM, hey, they sell crappy products, but no more than a lot of other companies out there. Hey, Jason, you ever bought a product off of a Google search or Amazon.com store? or saw one that you were just like, what the heck is this?
Oh,
Never, right? Never.
Well, no, but I see stuff all the time that's like garbage, but it doesn't, it's, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna buy a garbage product. It's a choice. You know what I mean? Like, people, I don't know, this thing that MLM companies all sell garbage products. Maybe it's somewhat true. Part of the industry, they're all about just the business model, and there really is no real product, and they put some piece of garbage on the market. But it happens everywhere, I think, is what your point is. And, the thing that frustrates me about this statement is, okay, so, we're not going to go in specifics of which company we're in, but our company is publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And last I checked, and I don't know if it's still there, but it was at $1 billion in market cap. And so do you think there's some frivolous garbage product associated with a company like that? I really doubt it. And even if you thought it was, let me tell you, the products that we sell are the products that you would find in Walmart. I'm not saying quality or comparable. I'm just saying, the product we sell, they sell it at Walmart, they sell it at Target, they sell it at GNC, they sell, so are they selling garbage? So just because it's MLM, suddenly what they're selling is garbage. That's what's so ridiculous. It's like he's hanging his hat on the old idea that, that where some MLMs were just selling snake oils, is the kind of the term that I think. And that is so far from the truth these days. Yes, is it still happening? But that's like saying, you brought up Amazon. That's like saying when you do a search for a product, that every product you search for is a good product. Not necessarily. I've sent a lot of stuff back to Amazon because I was like, what? This is not what I thought it was. I'm sure you have too, Chris.
Oh, absolutely. I've also gone out to restaurants for lunch and dinner and paid to eat horribly crappy food. Now, I'll never go back to that restaurant, and there's been a couple times where I've demanded, hey, look, I'm not paying for this because this is absolute just crap food. Now, using the same logic here that he's using for MLM, I should say all restaurants are just, they have useless products and there's no place for them. No, that's one bad experience. That's one bad meal. I can't do a broad stroke across every other restaurant out there. It's just silly. Now, here's a third point, and this is actually what you were going back to earlier, Jason, about possible defamation. So the article says, the only people who actually buy these wares are the company's sales representatives themselves, period, and end quote. Wow. So, first off, that's a lie, like a flat-out lie. I would love to see the research or the statistics where he got that from, because there isn't any. So basically, he's saying in the entire MLM industry, out of all the thousands of companies out there, and hundreds of thousands of distributors, and hundreds of thousands of products and service, there isn't one person in the entire world who's buying a product or service from one of these companies who's not a distributor. And a distributor is someone who's actually bought the rights to sell the product. Now, Jason, I checked a couple weeks ago, and I saw at least one person in our organization who actually buys a product and isn't necessarily in the business. Right? We have at least one person, don't we?
Yeah, we have at least one person, so I guess that makes the statement false. We actually have more than that, but that's just so far-fetched and so ridiculous. And I know what he's referring to. There are some companies that sell the opportunity under the guise of, hey, you're going to make money off the product because it's this wonderful, great product, and the only people that are really taking the product are the distributors. And here's the other catch-all on that people need to understand. I have a lot of people who purely paid me money every month and bought my product because they love the product. And they loved it so, and they were just customers. I had no interest in making them a distributor. And they came to me and said, I want to become a distributor. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want to do this business? Well, not really. Well, then why do you want to become a distributor? Well, because I have a lot of people asking me about it, and I feel like if I refer people to you, Like, you're only going to get paid, not me, right? I go, well, technically, yeah. Well, if I refer people to you, I have to be a distributor in order to get some of that referral fee for that, right? Because what a lot of our long-term customers like to do is obviously get their product paid for. If they talk about it and somebody asks them where to get it and they suddenly realize, oh, geez, I'm giving away money, they're going to come to us. Well, let me tell you how that skews our numbers. There's a lot of customers in our business that aren't technically customers if you were to pull them up in our downline tree, but they really are. The only reason they're that status is they chose that status, but they're really customers. They came to us originally to not join the business, but to be a customer. And they asked us later to join the business because they thought they were going to have some referrals. Some did, some didn't. So there's other things you have to consider, even when you look at somebody's distributor base. When you have a customer program in your company, it's not always representative of what's really going on. So yeah, it's funny, Chris, because you say, do we have one customer? Yeah, I think we've got one customer. So I think that makes that statement false among everything else I've just said.
And you did mention, and this is one of the things where we think the industry needs to improve upon, Jason, is that a lot of times companies and leaders put too much emphasis on recruiting. And we've talked about this numerous times in books we've published, radio shows, blog articles, training videos, that people are building a glass house and they're not putting enough focus on customers. So I'll give the author the benefit of the doubt that's kind of what he was touching on.
But let me make one point. Let me make one point, Chris, on that too before you move on. You know, the only reason we ever even struggle to keep our customer count up is because our customers want to become distributors, either because they want to get really serious about a business or they want to do like a referral type program. So like if you were to look at us and go, gosh, how do we have so many customers? Because we try to preach that to people, you should have so many customers. The only time we ever struggle with it is when that happens. If you take over the years, all the people that we've had have come to us of customers, it's been quite a few, like a lot. And the only reason they're not a status as a customer and they're a status of a distributor now is because they chose to be, but they're still really a customer. And I want to point that out because that's an important distinction that people don't understand in companies that even have a customer program, you know, trying to keep even minimum requirements on customers, because a lot of companies have a minimum requirement on how many customers you can have, which I'm sure the author probably is not aware of. And sometimes that requirement's hard to meet because of these things that don't consider what's really going on. And I felt that's important for me to point out because I think people that are listening to this, we know a lot more about what's really going on than the reader. I think you can tell because we're giving more specifics and they really aren't. They're giving vague statements that, oh, well, there's no real product and there's no one's really buying it. It's not true. Sorry to cut you off, Chris, but I wanted to make that point.
No, that's a great point, and I'll add one more point on that before we move on. Our company actually conducts audits to make sure people are meeting their customer requirements. I mean, like a lot of MLM companies care about that, and they want to make sure that their sales force is out there selling the product and getting customers. So moving on to another point that Mr. Myers wrote, he said, companies say we pay out millions of dollars in commissions, and that sounds very impressive. But who gets those millions? Fitzpatrick, who's a scholar he quoted earlier, asked in an online interview. Well, our analysis shows that 50 to 80% of all commission goes to the top 1%, end quote. First off, that's just a really odd number to quote. So, and it's very inaccurate. It's a very broad range. So anywhere from half to about 3/4 of commission goes to the top 1%. That doesn't sound very accurate to me, and also they're trying to manipulate. I read this as a reader, trying to manipulate the facts to make it sound like that only the top 1% make any money, which isn't, which you can look at so many industries and say, you know what, most of the people don't make any money at it. I mean, Jason, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, okay. Historically in MLM, the top 1% have made a lot of the money. Like that's just always what it's been, but not to the extent that I think they're trying to skew it. First of all, he's assuming that everyone's joining MLM because they want to be the top income earner. I know a lot of people that an extra $500 to $1,000 a month makes a huge difference in their family. That makes a huge difference in a household. So maybe those people never had a desire to be the top 1% or were realistic enough to know that they were not willing to work hard enough to get there. And maybe they don't think they have enough talent to get there, which I don't believe anyone. I think anyone can do it if they want to, but whatever. I'm not going to argue with whether somebody feels they have enough talent or not to make it to the top 1%. But here's what's really deceptive about this statement. True, if it's true, let's say 1%. Let's just say it's true. Here's the problem with that. That's true in anything. If you took all the real estate agents out there and you took let's start with the people who actually passed the exam. It is a very low percentage of people who actually make money in real estate who actually take the actual step of passing the exam. But let's back up and go to the beginning. All the people that pay money to prepare for the exam or do take some substantial step financially into becoming an agent, and they may or may not pass the exam. It is a very low percentage. And I don't know the exact percentages. I don't like to throw up exact percentages like the author is doing here with MLM because it's really hard to get an accurate figure on any of this in any industry because a lot of the stuff if you get it from online or you get it from some source that hasn't really verified it. And I'm not going to fall into that trap where I state, but I know it's a very, very low number, both in common sense of people that I know that have tried it and as well as what I've read out there. And I know it's very, very low. So the point is real estate's no different. Let's look at the high school football player who wants to make it to the NFL. What percentage do you think really makes the NFL? What about the guy who wants to,
Jason,
what?
I'll say this. I was actually watching a TV show last week where they were talking about NCAA college athletes, football players, and college basketball players who went from college, which is even much more elite than high school, on to professional sports, and it was like 1% to 2% was all that went on from the college level to the professional level.
Well, wow, there you go. So it's probably even worse if you're in high school. And so, we haven't validated that source there again, but they're saying 1-2%.
Well, to give you the source, it was HBO's Real Sports.
Okay. So they may or may not be right. So I think, here's the problem is Mr. Myers and us and others that are debating with him on his blog are going to go back and forth. We're not going to go back and forth unless it's absolutely necessary on something that he comments on what we say, because it doesn't even get us anywhere. All we're trying to do is provide you a different logic and a different set of thinking, because this is very skewed against MLM. This is obviously somebody that hates MLM. Take it from somebody like us. We're not the distributors who think the MLM is end all be all. And we're not just saying this in our blog. Anyone that listens to any of our videos on any of our websites over the years, you can see where we stand. We are consistent. We see the problems with MLM, but we also know that MLM is a solid business model and it can be built correctly and built right. And that we want you to be aware that there's two sides, just like there is to every story, and that when you throw around these numbers, and you have to think that everything's like that. So when you're a young guy, even out of Harvard, and you go to a big corporation, what percentage of the people that want to make it to the top in the corporation do you think actually make it? That's even worse, because sometimes it's not based on talent. Sometimes it's based on politics. What percentage of people that go into politics actually make it to Congress, or even, let's talk about president, but let's just say Congress or senator? What percentage of people make it to that point? I mean, you could sit here, we could go in everything in life, and you could find something that people don't make it on. And I can tell you a lot of those things, there are factors that you really don't have a lot of control over, such as politics, luck. There's a lot of things. MLM is like any other business where I really believe if you work it hard enough, like you can get to where you want to go. You can be one of the people on the top if you're willing to work hard enough. Some people may need to work harder than others, but politics and none of that stuff plays any part in what we're doing here. It's just how hard you're willing to work. It's no different than if you open a retail store or you open a law firm or whatever in a town. It's how hard are you willing to work and what are you willing to do to get to where you want to go. This article paints it like it's you join MLM, you're going to fail because it's a flawed business model to begin with, and that's just so wrong to the extent that I do realize there are some companies out there that the article may be partially true because if it's that company, but that's easily remedied by investigating the company you're about to join. Is there a solid product? Is it a solid company? Because the problem is you could join a company that gives this article credence. And so I don't know, just the percentages, it's just really weak to throw that kind of stuff. It's like you're trying to scare people off, and I think it works. And hey, if you can't face that, if you want to be successful in something, you have to face the fact that you're going to have to fight to get there. And I'll leave this topic myself, Chris, to you with one thing. And again, kind of like you quoting HBO, but probably about 12 years ago, not 15 years ago, as I'm trying to think, is when I was in law school, I heard a statistic published on attorneys. And the statistics, because everyone thinks when you go to law school and you pass the bar that you're going to make lots of money. Everyone generally thinks that. But the statistic 15 years ago, and it was something along the lines of 2% of lawyers make over 100,000 and 1% of lawyers make over 200,000. Now look at these numbers again. It's pretty pathetic when I have a lot of friends that got about 200 grand in debt to get a graduate degree in law. Why did they do that? Because they thought they were going to make six-figure income or more. And the statistics are just not supporting that, at least 15 years ago. So here's another example where people are thinking one thing and the reality is another. So my point is low percentages of success are like that in everything.
Well, that makes me think of, this was probably about 10 years ago, Jason. I wanted to learn to speak Spanish. So I went out there and I bought Rosetta Stone software for $300. It was $299.99. I remember that clearly. And you know what? I never learned Spanish. And I used the software for a while, but I stopped using it. So I don't blame Rosetta Stone. I blame myself because I did it for about an hour a day for 2 or 3 months, which is not going to get me there. So
I don't know.
Is that Rosetta Stone's fault?
Rosetta Stone sounds like a scam to me.
Yeah, me too, huh?
Your point is if it's a solid product and a solid company and somebody doesn't have success, maybe there's somebody else to blame instead of the company or the industry. Is that the point I think you're trying to make?
Yeah, it is. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but it's usually not this all or nothing. Oh gosh, you know what? MLM or the whole industry of learning another language is a complete scam. No, there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Well, I know lots of people that have learned a language off that software. I even think you said somebody you knew learned languages off that software. I don't know if it was you or somebody. So I know it works, Maybe you just didn't put enough work in.
And that's the point we're trying to make here is that you can make these very bold one-sentence statements or pull out one figure or one statistics that's very eye-catching, but you have to dig down deeper on it and realize, hey, you know what? There's a lot of factors, and there's more sides than just that fact, the bigger story. Another thing about talking about the failure rate, you mentioned this a few minutes ago for MLM distributors, Jason. hey, look, I have a financial planning degree, and I know financial planners today where a lot of them advise their clients to start some type of side business, home business, or multi-level marketing business for the most part so they can have tax write-offs to save money. So maybe some people start that with really no intent on actually building the business, but just as a way to legally expense parts of their home or to be able to write off more of their taxes. So how does that figure in these stats here, Jason?
Well, and that's the thing. And the other point I'll make is that there's a typical overtone in this article, that I say typical because anyone that writes anything about MLM, that they're not really selling the product, they're just selling the business. And he made a comment somewhere in the article. Let me read it, find it. He said something about, and I don't want to misquote it, so I want to try to find it here. Okay, MLM is a sales strategy in which a company's representatives don't just sell the product, they also market the rights to sell it. Marketers earn a commission for each member they recruit into the company's sales force, with rewards for enlisting new salespeople. Now, I got two. The reason why I want to bring this up here is, it kind of relates to what we're talking about right now with the success rate and why people join and all this. But I want to jump on this. There's two things here that bother me about this statement. So, like a franchise. So, like McDonald's, when they charge $1 million franchise, I don't even know if that's correct, but yeah, I know it's a lot. Like, the franchise fees are massive on a lot of these franchise companies. You are to buy their name and the right to sell their product or service, you have to pay money. So now are franchises scams? And so I'll say, yes, if McDonald's sold franchises to people, but they never sold hamburgers, then that would be a pyramid scheme. Okay, so yes, in that case. But they're selling hamburgers, so it isn't. So this statement, that the idea that selling the rights to something, to market something, is wrong, people have been doing it for years. The other thing is marketers earn a commission for each member they recruit into the company's sales force. That's a sometimes. And let me explain. Some companies pay bonuses for people that you recruit, and some companies' comp plans, in our opinion, are poorly written, where the only way you can really make money is to recruit. And they have a customer program, but the customer program pays so little that it's essentially just a thing to dupe people, to use his word, into thinking it's a real company with real intentions of getting customers. And when you look at their comp plans, it doesn't add up. Like, so what do people end up doing? They end up recruiting all the time because you can't make any money, getting customers, and people are just going to recruit. So if that's what's going on, and some companies do that, then what he's alluding to is true. But that's not what a lot of solid, legitimate companies do. Our company, okay, we don't get a bonus for recruiting people. I don't care whether somebody buys $500 of product to join my business or spends $500 of product to be as a customer. I could care less. I get paid the same. Doesn't matter. Like, I have no incentive. I don't want somebody to be a distributor unless they want to be a distributor. And like I said, we have customers sometimes that come to us and want to become a distributor. And I oftentimes talk them out of it because, most of those people never really do anything because their intention is not really to build a business. Their intention is to maybe get an occasional referral fee. And most of the time that never happens. But they're still a customer and they're still using the product every month. And so some of this stuff goes into, it's very related to the success rate, because you mentioned people doing it for taxes. A lot of people skewing the statistics because they want to be a referral person, but they're really just a glorified customer. And to allude to the fact that marketing the rights to something, there's something wrong with it. I mean, all this stuff is just, it's really, really, what's the word? I want to use the right word here. The word, I think it's irresponsible to write this kind of stuff. Because it's not considering what's really going on out there. It's considering some of what's going on out there. I don't know. Is that coming across clearly, Chris? Because I'm saying it, but I'm not sure if the audience is, if I'm communicating it right.
I think it does. I think you got your point across. And something that bugged me about the paragraph you read there is that he just said, they get paid bonuses on new people they recruit. Doesn't even mention in there, or at least that you read on there, doesn't even mention in there about people earning commission off products they sell, or the service they sell, or customers they sell. So again, he's painting the picture that the only way to make money is by recruiting other distributors or by recruiting other people to buy the franchise, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now,
which, by the way, again, let's reiterate, we disagree with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with recruiting, because that's how you get leverage. That's why McDonald's sells more franchises, so they can move more of their hamburgers and more of their internal products, and so they can acquire more real estate. That's why they do it, okay? So we want the leverage, but if that's all you're doing is recruiting, and you're not at least trying to teach your team how to get customers, and I say trying because a lot of people are new to the business and they're doing the best they can and they have the best intentions, and maybe their stats don't look good in that area over the last quarter or whatever. But if the education is focused on getting customers, then I don't have any problem with somebody in MLM building the business that way. There are a lot of people that are doing it that way, and this article doesn't even talk about that.
And I want to read a few of the sentences towards the end of the article, and we'll wrap up there. And I think this really sets the tone and gives a very unique perspective into more of the author's opinion and experience or lack of experience with business in general, multi-level marketing, etc. So the article goes on to say, the limited benefits of network marketing will never justify this sacrifice of connections and reputation. Even if a salesperson does manage to reach a level at which they earn substantial commission, they do so on the backs of misguided chumps, and over time that base will erode and fail. Much more likely, the process simply costs a member more than it ever earns, wasting precious time and money until they acknowledge their mistake. Matthew Meyer doesn't want to sell your bullshit or sell the right to sell your bullshit. End quote. There's nothing even there to even really rebuttal, because all it is him. He just sounds like a very, angry or jaded person. And maybe he got involved in network marketing at some point, or maybe a friend or an uncle or a family member, got him involved and made him all these promises. I don't know. But to again make this blanket statement that the only way you can earn substantial commission is to do so on the backs of misguided chumps. Wow.
You know what? What's really doesn't even account for this, Chris? The amount of skill. If you and I didn't make a dime in MLM over the years, the amount of skills that we have acquired, business skills. You're talking to some, and so by the way, when Mr. Myers, if you listen to this, I have a degree in accounting, a degree in finance, and I have a doctorate in law. So it's not like I'm not educated, okay? And I still learned a ton about business, things that I didn't learn in school, and things that I didn't even learn growing up in a family business, okay? So it wasn't like I didn't have practical. I learned a lot from this business. And I can tell you that these so-called chumps, as you call them, one of my chumps, as you call him, I guess he's a chump because that's what you call, he's, it's in my downline, so he must be a chump. He actually doubled his salary because of the skills he learned in MLM. He's working at a regular job right now, and he wanted to, he just was tired of making what he was making. So he was applying for jobs that was twice his salary. And he said, you know how I got these interviews? You know how I eventually got this job? The sales skills that I learned, because I have an engineering degree. I didn't have a lot of skills on how to talk to people. And the stuff I learned in your training, I didn't pull this out of him. He offered this to me. He said, I've had a ton of stories like this over the years, but this is the most recent one that comes to mind. And he said, Jason, when I when I went in the interview, I knew exactly how to handle the person because I knew when to listen, when to ask questions, when to present what I could do to help them, why they should hire me. All of that I would have never done that had I not had these skill sets. Now, could he have learned this elsewhere? Of course he could have. But he is an MLM and he learned these skills from MLM and it actually improved his income. So, I guess if you took what he spent to join the business, if he got, quote, scammed, which Chris and I both know he didn't, but let's say he did, and you divided that into the difference in salary now, I think there's quite a multiplier there for him on an investment in himself. So this idea that, everyone joins MLM to make millions and everyone joins MLM because they're told they're going to make millions is just not right. There are a lot of other benefits of joining an MLM. You mentioned one with taxes. I just wanted to jump in on that, Chris, because he's saying stuff like chumps. And I'm just like, hey, I know a lot of people in MLM that haven't made any money, but they would never trade their experience for the things they've learned because here's something he doesn't understand. They never joined MLM to make money. They joined MLM to learn other things, and that's exactly what's happened. I just want to say something to Mr. Meyer if you're listening to this. I mean, you're probably a nice guy. I don't have anything against you personally. I honestly think when you wrote this, you just sounded like you were angry at MLM for some reason or another. Maybe you tried, it didn't work. Maybe a friend or somebody you cared about got screwed around. If that happened, I apologize on behalf of the industry. I don't like when that happens because, I know it happens and it just gives the whole industry a bad name. But I don't like what you wrote. I hope you don't look at our rebuttal as some battle because I don't want to battle you. I just want to show how some of what you wrote is it's not. If it was a law school exam or an English paper, there would be a million holes you could shoot through it. And so, you're probably, as I said, probably a nice guy, probably a good dude, but this stuff is just. We just can't let stuff like this go unchecked. It's just MLM is a great business model. It's just abused by some people, and that's the truth. And unfortunately, your impression of it came from some knowledge of some sort of abuse. And again, I apologize on behalf of the industry if that happened.